of the things that I think is so unique about this model, and we're starting to hear more and more from industry, is the growing gap from where students are leaving higher ed and they're coming out as these top-notch students that understand the theory, but then to go into the workplace and hit the ground running as a full-time employee is a little bit of a different ballgame, as most of us know. And so I've heard from industry over the maybe the last 12 months is that gap is growing, and how do we start to close that? And the Reimagined Internship does that.
Welcome to Being the Change, the official podcast of James Madison University, brought to you by Madison Magazine. Each episode brings to you stories of how members of the JMU community combine intellect with action to live lives of purpose and meaning. That's Being the Change.
What's up, JMU? Andy Perrine here. Welcome to Being the Change. Today's topic is one that I think will fascinate our listeners. It's about X-Labs, a interdisciplinary endeavor at JMU that is really fascinating, and it's kind of a big deal in higher ed. And with us are the executive director of X-Labs, Connie Frigo. Welcome, Connie.
Thank you.
Also, one of the students that is in X-Labs, Pohland, is with us. She's a senior. And she's just been through a very interesting experience this summer called the Reimagined Internship. Welcome, Bonnie.
Thank you.
And also with us today is Carrie Combs, and she's the Senior Director of Corporate and Foundation Relations at JMU. Welcome, Carrie.
Glad to be here.
All right. Well, I'd like to start. Connie, could you explain to our listeners what X-Labs is?
Sure. X-Labs is a space, an innovation space on JMU's campus that is not attached to any one specific discipline. We are out of the Research, Economic Development, and Innovation Division, and we serve the entire JMU community through cross-disciplinary collaborations that solve big problems that single disciplines cannot solve. And so we are continually putting groups of people together from different disciplines that can solve problems that external partners give us, or that a faculty member wishes to solve, or that JMU wishes to solve.
And it's interdisciplinary in that you've got faculty from lots of different disciplines, and also you've got students from lots of different disciplines coming to X-Labs and having an experience of trying to solve a big problem.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And so these students who are majoring in computer science or majoring in international affairs or perhaps art or music come together with students from distinctly different disciplines that are all needed in the classroom at the same time to offer solutions for these problems that are presented.
And where do these problems come from?
A lot of times the problems come from external partners. And so it could be the U.S. government in some form. It could be private industry, could be a local nonprofit, could be educational institutions. And it also can be JMU, us solving problems for our students, for our campus, for higher education.
What's an example of a problem that students are working on?
A problem that students are working on, there's a great example this semester of a partnership with Dynamic Aviation here locally. They're an aviation company out of Bridgewater, Virginia, just down the road. And they are the proud owners of the very first Air Force One.
It was Dwight
aircraft.
Eisenhower's Air Force One.
You got it. Yeah, from the 1950s. They own it. They would like to, their big problem that we're partnering on them with to help solve is, what do we do with this airplane to get it in front of as many people as possible across the world?
It's a beautiful, shiny DC-3.
Yeah, it's an amazing aircraft,
Right.
and they want to fully restore it to its original condition. How do you get an aircraft like that flying again? How do you have money to do so? If we were to put it in a museum, how do we get the most traffic to that museum? So we have assembled a cross-disciplinary team of instructors, of students, and of folks from the First Air Force One nonprofit, which is was created to solve this problem,
Right.
to help us come to solutions for them.
And so this is a really quite a real world experience for the students.
Yes, and the real gift of the experience from what I've seen so far when students interact in one of these X-Labs courses is the interaction they have with external partners can be game-changing, not only for the direction of their careers, but in getting them to even think, like, I had no idea what I'm learning to do here at in my major and outside of my major could actually influence where I go with my career.
Well, and this is a very unusual experience for undergraduates. X-Labs has really brought a lot of attention to James Madison University. In fact, there was an article on the cover of the Chronicle of Higher Ed that was generated by X-Labs. And one of the reasons why it's so unusual is because this is typically an experience that folks would go through in a graduate level. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's very true. And oftentimes it's for very specific research that graduate students at doctoral PhD levels are doing once they've identified that that's the area they want to become experts in. And so exposing students to this research process as undergraduates, which is something JMU is really good at, is a special part of the whole process here.
Well, and one of the reasons why we're here to speak today, and this is one of the reasons why Bonnie and Carrie are also with us today, is that there was a fascinating and very unique experience that was put together last spring semester, and it was with a corporate partner named Ellucian, and they're up in the Northern Virginia area. They're a huge software as a service corporation, and many of our listeners may have heard of it. But it led to what we're calling the Reimagined Internship. Can you tell us a little bit about how that worked?
Sure. It was a pilot program. Everything X-Labs does is a pilot. We pilot new things all the time. This was a pilot program with Ellucian. They're a global tech company specifically dedicated to higher education. Their chief technology officer and I were having a conversation about what kind of skills they're looking for their young employees to have, recent graduates from college. And he said, we are looking at whole brain engineers. And what is a whole brain engineer?
I was just about to ask.
Yeah, whole brain engineer is somebody who knows how to code really well and solve greater problems than just what the code is going to solve. They have a holistic understanding of the problem from an ethicist standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint, from a communication standpoint, teamwork standpoint.
User experience, functionality,
all of that. And so the skills he was describing in the whole brain engineer are the skills that a lot of students walk away with from an X-Labs experience. And so I pursued a conversation to say, how's your, could we have an intersection here with your internship program? What does that look like? X-Labs could offer a prep course that begins to get the students thinking in these skills, experience with these skills, and then they can be brought on to your campus for an internship. And that's basically what the Reimagined Internship pilot program was, a prep course in X-Labs, followed by a 12-week paid internship on site at Ellucian.
And this happened this past summer.
Yep, the internship was 12 weeks over the summer. The prep course was in the spring, a 15-week course. Selection process took place in December.
Well, and it was very selective, too. I remember that you had a lot of applications for not that many spots.
We had 73 applications for 10 spots, yes.
And so you got into this experience, Bonnie, is that right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, what's your major, Bonnie?
I'm getting a dual degree in economics and international affairs.
Wow. Bonnie, I'd love to hear what your experience was like with this Reimagined Internship.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thanks so much for having me. This was a really awesome internship program. I'm so glad that JMU and Ellucian were able to come together to even have this program. So the way that it worked is that it was a product team of JMU interns. We started off with 10, then had to go down to 9 when we actually went to Ellucian headquarters in Reston, Virginia. My specific role was as the ethicist on a product team. And a lot of people hear that and ask me, hey, what does that even mean? What do you do? So a lot of what I was doing was understanding what an ethicist even is on a product team,
Mm-hmm.
and then how can I help my team. So I was a software development ethicist,
Mm-hmm.
which means that I had to understand how we were building something, why we were building something,
Mm-hmm.
but also the ethics piece when it comes to user empathy and the user experience, understanding who we're building for.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a good thing that we're building for the client? Is there a way to ensure and protect user autonomy? So it's kind of like a two sides approach to ethics.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that so fascinating. And being able to work with the rest of my team that is so interdisciplinary to then make like a full software for the company,
Mm-hmm.
that was just really incredible and a rewarding experience.
One of the things that is most unusual about this enterprise, and one of the reasons why it's called Reimagined, is because typically internships you go on your own, but you were in a cohort. Describe what it was like to go with other JMU students to this full experience up in Reston all summer.
Yeah, so we were able to spend 5 months together
Mhm.
in this prep course before actually going to Ellucian for the internship. And because we had those relationships, we were very secure in our roles, in our duties, and then how to collaborate with each other.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to hit the ground running when we got there. When we actually got our hands on Ellucian resources, immediately we were able to start building again because we already knew how to function as a product team.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very clear when we were at the internship. We even got told so many times, where's your manager? What are you guys doing?
Right.
Because with our manager, we were a fully functional Scrum team. So there was a lot of independence that came with that. And that was really rewarding as well, to be able to work with this full team who knows what they're doing, who's already comfortable with each other. I think the best part about going in as a cohort is we were already able to make the most of our time when we were there.
And for our listeners who are not familiar with how software is developed, describe what a Scrum team is.
Yeah, so a Scrum team is a small group of usually developers and then the certified Scrum owner, so like a product manager, and it's very small. It uses agile development to be able to create like a minimum viable product, like a minimally functioning software to then present and get more funding and things like that. So the way that we're different from a traditional Scrum team is that we did have designers with us throughout the whole process, plus the storyteller / marketer, and then an ethicist. So we were kind of this expansion of a Scrum team into a cross-disciplinary product team.
And describe for us what a typical day was at Ellucian.
On this product team, there was no typical day.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. I really liked being able to go in with so much creativity and actually not knowing what's going to happen the next day, because that's just how any kind of project development goes. Is, it's always just the next thing. And, one day you're brainstorming, one day you're interviewing potential clients, and the next day you're scrapping the whole thing and restarting. So it was always some different phase of development. And like I said, it wasn't linear either. Sometimes we have to go back, do a whole design sprint, start from the beginning. Hey, this didn't work. We need to revamp this design. We need to totally rethink this. So I loved that there was no typical day.
Connie, the experience at X-Labs prepares students to be uniquely qualified to handle the kind of ambiguity that Bonnie's talking about. Isn't that right?
Yes, it's through the design thinking methodology.
Right.
And so the students are learning how to ideate and how to do it as objectively as possible, and kind of leave assumptions out the door. But then also along the way, as Bonnie said, one informational interview that they get with someone from the field could cause them to scrap something and say, you know what, this actually is not a direction that's going to be effective. So let's start over again. And so they learn interviewing skills, first of all,
Right.
of how to take the knowledge that's out there in the field and then make decisions about it and say, we think based on what we've gathered, this is the way to go. They're constantly interviewing customers and potential users of the product they're developing. And to the product team that Ellucian put together as this pilot program purposefully added the humanities into a product team, which is not typical.
Right.
And their reason for doing that is because of the forward thinking they're doing, their need to do because of AI. So they're saying, you know, in 5 years, a product team is going to look different. How do we get ahead of that? How do we test out a product team of the future? And so by bringing an ethicist, which was the role Bonnie had, and the storyteller on and the designers on from the very beginning, it, you know, was the goal was to produce something that with AI, because it was an AI based product, that can be current and not be an outdated, you know, they're trying to stay one step ahead of how they need to change internally.
Well, and also still on the line of thinking about encountering so much ambiguity and uncertainty, the name X-Labs is very interesting in that it's basically, for those of you who remember algebra, solving for X is basically you have to come and encounter an unknown and figure it out based on the theorem.
Yes, and in the largest sense, X is everything,
Right,
right?
right.
It's everything. And so, and it requires collaboration.
Right.
And so the logo itself is symbolic of that. It shows, you could perceive it as 4 people kind of joined hands in the center. In the center is where the magic happens. And
Right.
that's the X-Lab space.
Well, if you search for JMU X Labs, it'll come right up. So I recommend to our listeners to take a look at that logo. Bonnie, how does encountering those uncertainties and then figuring it out or not figuring it out add to your confidence level as a student?
Yeah, so in a pilot program, you can imagine there are a lot of uncertainties and there's a lot of unforeseen obstacles that we have to figure out how to navigate together. So, I mean, when we started off and even just getting our prompt, our problem statement and things like that, a lot of us were like, how do we even solve this? Where do we start? Where do we go? And throughout the initial development phase, a lot of us felt that way. It was constantly, do we even really know what we're doing?
Well, what was the prompt?
Essentially, higher education institutions need a way to analyze their curriculum for student career outcomes to help them, and also to analyze their curriculum effectiveness when it comes to certain skills that are taught. So it's a lot of this jargon of methodology and effectiveness. And to begin, we even had to just define the words in our own prompt. So there were a lot of uncertainties, but everyone who wanted to do this project was really excited by uncertainty, and we wanted to solve these things. And I think it really helped that we were all able to solve this together when it comes to confidence building.
Right.
And there was a lot of trust. We were able to throw out some wacky ideas and, you know, hear back from a teammate, oh, actually, you know, that's a good idea. We should run with that. Or I disagree, and here's why. I think being able to have those uncertainties in a collaborative space really built our confidence and trust as a team.
One of the fascinating elements of X-Labs is the symbiosis between the problem owner, whether it's government or corporation or nonprofit, and the university. And so the folks at Ellucian were watching this real time occurring and learning from it. And Carrie, as the Director of Corporate and Foundation Relations at JMU, how unique is that kind of relationship with a corporation?
Yeah, it's been really fun to watch this over, gosh, almost the past year. And so when we started having conversations with Ellucian last fall, how do we do this together in a
Mm-hmm.
way that works for everyone? And one of the things Connie and I have talked a lot about that really has made this such a unique experience is they're a true partner.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times you kind of use the whole client terminology,
Right.
and we feel quite strongly that this worked with Ellucian because they came to the table wanting to invest in the students and the faculty.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to solve, they had a problem they needed to solve, but they really came to the table wanting it to work for everyone. And so it just is such a beautiful example of how higher ed and industry can work together to help each other solve problems.
And it really allows us to look into the future, what our students are going to be needing to understand and function when they reach the career path they're headed toward.
It is. And one of the things that I think is so unique about this model, and we're starting to hear more and more from industry, is the growing gap from where students are leaving higher ed and they're coming out as these top-notch students that understand the theory,
Mm-hmm.
but then to go into the workplace and hit the ground running as a full-time employee is a little bit of a different ballgame, as
Right.
most of us know.
Right.
And so I've heard from industry over maybe the last 12 months is
Mhm.
that gap is growing, and how do we start to close that?
Mm-hmm.
And the Reimagined Internship does that.
Mm-hmm.
Ellucian came in from the start in the class and was a partner in teaching the students and helping set expectations of
Mhm.
what it would look like then in the summer to become a full-time intern. And at that point, they were employees of Ellucian. They were not JMU students.
Wow.
And so it's also when we're talking about, and this is maybe a little bit of jargon, but the whole work-based learning experience, the Reimagined Internship really helps just create this environment where students can feel safe in that learning lab of the class of X-Labs. And then they get put into this real world experience, but in a safe way with a cohort and with people, at the company that they already know. So it really has just been a beautiful example of how higher ed and industry can come together.
That's fascinating. Connie, what's next in the realm of reimagined internships?
Well, Carrie and I are continually working for new partners to launch in the spring and summer.
Mm-hmm.
One thing we are discovering as we talk with potential partners is every partnership is going to be unique
Mm-hmm.
to that company's structure,
Mm-hmm.
to
Mission. Right.
to what's an internship program look like. And so one thing we're realizing is that we will be very much a consulting
Mm-hmm.
partner
Mhm.
for them to say, you've got these problems. Well, here's what X-Labs could create
Right.
and work with you for this. But what is also very clear is that the problem statement must be clear.
Right. Right.
Right? That was one of the beautiful things about Ellucian. They put forward with such clarity what they were looking for.
Right.
That was easy for us to then hit the ground running on our end to make it all happen. So,
And now you've got something of a model that you can present to potential partners and say, this is how it could work.
this is how it could work.
Right.
And then if they say, but we don't have this piece of it, okay, well, what do you have? And what? So it's about understanding their structure, but it's also, as Carrie said, to keep the conversation open about what are the benefits to you?
Right.
What do you want to get out of this? What do you need to get out of it?
Right.
What do we need to get out of it as JMU and X-Labs and for the students? And so it's a constant open conversation
Right.
about the mutual benefits. And if that's not taking place, then it could quickly slip into the client
Yeah.
sphere. And
Right.
we don't want to have a client.
Right.
We want to have a partner and redefine how we can work together with industry.
Wow, that's a really interesting future for reimagined internships in the X-Labs. But I'm really hopeful that our listeners are excited to hear what's next for Bonnie. Are you a senior, right?
So I am a senior. I am going to be taking an additional year after this because I'm doing the JMU Washington semester this spring.
Oh, wow. That's great. What are you going to be studying?
So the way that the Washington semester works is that there's about a cohort of 15 political science and international affairs students
Mm-hmm.
who live in DC for the whole semester,
Mm-hmm.
work a full-time internship, and then also take 2 classes on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of another one of these cohort experiences.
Right.
And it's funny, I keep finding myself drawn to these experiences. And I really like the way that Carrie described it as a comfortable cohort launch into a work-based experience.
Yeah.
This is kind of what this is as well. So I'm really looking forward to that whole experience.
Well, we're really excited for what lies ahead for you, Bonnie. And I know our listeners are probably taking great joy in the future is bright when you get to talk to students. Connie, Carrie, and Bonnie, thank you so much for being on Being the Change. I really appreciate you coming to see us. And for our listeners, if you have any ideas for future episodes of Being the Change, you can contact us at beingthechange@jmu.edu. So the three of you, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next time to hear another story of how members of the James Madison University community are being the change. Dive deeper and consume countless other stories at jmu.edu/Madison Magazine. Go Dukes!
The Being the Change podcast was conceived by Jim Heffernan, editor of Madison Magazine, and me, Andy Perrine, head of JMU Marketing. Thanks to Jenna Polk and the team at Rose Library Studios, where the show is recorded by Steve Adderton, the guy who also captures those amazing campus drone shots you see on Instagram. Original music and episode production by Neil Perrine. All of us involved in creating Being the Change are JMU alumni, and we bleed purple. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.